You've been lied to about July 4th, 1776. The document you think you know, the one hanging in classrooms across America, isn't the real Declaration of Independence. The original contained passages so explosive, so dangerous to the established order, that they had to be buried. What if I told you that the Founding Fathers didn't just declare independence from Britain? They declared independence from something far more ancient, far more powerful, and the proof has been hiding in plain sight for 248 years. This is the untold story of America's true founding document. Not the sanitized version you memorized in school, but the complete declaration that revealed humanity's deepest secret. What really happened in that locked room in Philadelphia? Why were certain delegates sworn to secrecy? And why does every surviving copy of the official declaration contain subtle differences that scholars can't explain? Tonight, we're going to answer questions that historians have been too afraid to ask. What if the Declaration of Independence was more than a political document? What if it was a coded message to an ancient brotherhood? What if July 4th wasn't chosen randomly, but aligned with something written in the stars themselves? The story begins with Charles Thomson, the forgotten secretary of the Continental Congress, a man whose name was mysteriously erased from most history books. Thomson wasn't just a record keeper. He was a scholar of ancient languages, a student of Hermetic texts, and according to his private journals discovered in 1923, he believed the American colonies were destined to fulfill a prophecy written thousands of years before Columbus ever set sail. Thomson spent years studying mysterious symbols carved into pre-Columbian stones across the eastern seaboard. Symbols that shouldn't exist. Symbols that matched inscriptions found in Egyptian temples, Celtic monuments, and Phoenician tablets. He became convinced that America wasn't discovered, it was rediscovered. And when he shared his findings with Benjamin Franklin in 1775, everything changed. Franklin himself, a member of 9 different secret societies, saw in Thomson's research the key to something extraordinary. Together with Jefferson, they would encode this ancient knowledge directly into America's founding document. But they had to be careful. They had to hide it from the Crown's spies, and from something else that had been watching the colonies since their inception. The official story tells us that Thomas Jefferson wrote the Declaration in just 17 days. But Thomson's journals reveal something different. Jefferson didn't write it, he translated it. From what? From a document that Franklin had acquired during his years in France. A document that traced its origins back to the Library of Alexandria. This original text, known in occult circles as the Libertas Codex, contained the fundamental laws of human freedom, not as political ideas, but as cosmic principles. It spoke of natural rights not granted by governments, but encoded in human DNA itself. It described liberty not as a social construct, but as a frequency, a vibration that certain bloodlines could activate. The Committee of Five, Franklin, Jefferson, Adams, Sherman, and Livingston weren't just politicians. Each represented one point of a pentagram, an ancient symbol of protection. Each came from families with documented connections to pre-revolutionary secret societies, and each left behind correspondence referring to the great work they were undertaking. The evidence is overwhelming once you know where to look. First, consider the date itself, July 4th. Historians dismiss it as coincidence, but July 4th aligns with the heliacal rising of Sirius, the star that ancient Egyptians associated with resurrection and new beginnings. The same star that the Founding Fathers mysteriously included in their early flag designs before it was removed. Then there's the architecture. Why does Washington D.C. mirror the exact street layout of ancient Babylon? Why are there 13 levels to the pyramid on the dollar bill, matching the 13 original colonies and the 13 bloodlines mentioned in the Libertas Codex? Why did George Washington lay the Capitol cornerstone wearing full Masonic regalia at the exact moment Jupiter was rising in Virgo? Look at the signatures themselves. When you overlay them on a map of the colonies, they form a perfect geometric pattern, a pattern that matches star charts from 1776. But not our stars. These match the night sky as it would have appeared 12,000 years ago during what ancient texts call the First Independence. The language itself contains layers of meaning: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. In Jeffersonian code, these weren't just ideals. Life referred to the preservation of ancient bloodlines. Liberty meant freedom from interdimensional control. And happiness. In 18th century Hermetic texts, it meant achieving gnosis, direct knowledge of humanity's true origins. But critics weren't convinced. Mainstream historians like David McCullough dismissed these connections as conspiracy fantasies. They pointed out that the founders were educated men of the Enlightenment, not mystics chasing ancient prophecies. The geometric patterns? Mere coincidence. The astronomical alignments? Retrofitted interpretations. Yale professor Jonathan Steinberg went further, arguing that any coded meanings were simply the product of overactive modern imaginations. The Declaration, he wrote, was a practical political document, nothing more. To suggest otherwise is to diminish its real historical importance. Even the Smithsonian weighed in, stating officially that there was no credible evidence of any hidden version or secret meanings in the Declaration of Independence. But what if the skeptics were wrong? What if their dismissals were exactly what we were meant to believe? In 2019, advanced spectral imaging of the original Declaration revealed something extraordinary. Hidden text, written in iron gall ink, mixed with a substance that only appears under specific light wavelengths. Text that had been invisible for over 2 centuries. And what did it say? The passages spoke of the return of the old ones and humanity's covenant of separation. There was one thing the critics couldn't explain. Why did John Hancock sign his name so large? Traditional history says it was defiance against King George, but Hancock's personal papers, sealed until 2001, reveal the truth. He was marking a specific coordinate. His signature, when measured precisely, points to 42.36 when 71.0588980. The exact location where, in 1692, strange lights were seen descending from the sky, witnessed by dozens of colonists who described beings of light, delivering a message about America's future destiny. This is where the story takes its most incredible turn. What if the Declaration of Independence wasn't declaring independence from Britain at all? What if it was declaring independence from an extraterrestrial influence that had controlled human development for millennia? The suppressed passages of the Declaration allegedly contained references to the Watchers, beings that ancient texts describe as humanity's overseers. The same beings mentioned in the Book of Enoch, the Sumerian tablets, and the Vedic texts. According to Thomson's most secret writings, these entities had been guiding human civilization through bloodline controls and frequency manipulation. The Founding Fathers, through their connection to ancient mystery schools, had learned the truth. Humanity was a hybrid species, created through genetic manipulation thousands of years ago. The unalienable rights weren't philosophical concepts. They were dormant DNA sequences that, when activated, would free humans from their programmed limitations. July 4, 1776 wasn't just political independence. It was humanity's first attempt to break free from cosmic quarantine. The parallels across cultures are undeniable. The Hopi prophecies speak of the great purification that would begin when the eagle lands on the moon, fulfilled when Apollo 11, launched from the Kennedy Space Center, named after a president who spoke of secret societies, planted the American flag on the lunar surface. The Mayan calendar didn't end in 2012. It counted down to America's 236th year, when the feathered serpent would return. The Hindu texts describe a land across the Western Ocean where the final age of humanity would begin. Even the Aboriginal Australians have Dreamtime stories of the Star People choosing a new land between 2 great waters for humanity's awakening. But here's what connects them all. Each tradition mentions 13 tribes, 13 bloodlines, or 13 sacred points. The exact number of original American colonies. Coincidence? Or evidence of a plan millennia in the making? But something went wrong. By 1787, just 11 years after the Declaration, the founders were already in panic. The Constitutional Convention wasn't just about creating a new government, it was damage control. The frequencies they had activated were attracting attention. The Watchers had noticed. Thomson's final journal entries, written in a cipher that took codebreakers until 1976 to crack, described terrifying visions. Cities in flames, skies filled with craft beyond human comprehension. A war not between nations but between dimensions. He wrote, "We have awakened something that should have remained sleeping." The Declaration was meant to free us, but we may have doomed our descendants to a battle they cannot understand. This is why Thomson destroyed most of his papers before his death. This is why the Liberty Bell cracked. Some say from the frequency it was meant to amplify. This is why the original Declaration had to be hidden and replaced with a safer version. Modern science dismisses it all. Historians point out that there's no physical evidence of these suppressed passages. Physicists laugh at the idea of freedom frequencies. Geneticists find no trace of alien DNA in human genomes. The Smithsonian's official position remains unchanged. The Declaration of Independence is exactly what it appears to be, a political document from 1776, nothing more. They explain away the astronomical alignments as selective pattern matching. The hidden text discovered in 2019? Simply preservation damage creating the illusion of writing, the geometric patterns in the signatures. The human brain's tendency to see patterns where none exist. But if this never existed, why do 33rd degree Freemasons still perform a secret ritual every July 4th at exactly 3:33 a.m.? Why does the CIA have a classified file labeled Project 1776 that no Freedom of Information Act request can access? Why did NASA name its Mars landing site Columbia after the ancient goddess who secretly appears in American symbolism? Perhaps the truth lies somewhere between myth and reality. Some researchers suggest the declaration was indeed encoded, but not with alien messages, rather with alchemical principles about transforming human consciousness. The independence was psychological, not cosmic. Others propose that the founders, influenced by Enlightenment ideals and Hermetic philosophy, deliberately created a new mythology for a new nation. They embedded sacred geometry and astronomical alignments not because of ancient aliens, but to align America with what they saw as universal principles of harmony and order. Or perhaps the suppressed passages were real, but dealt with something more earthly yet equally explosive. Agreements with Native American tribes that recognized their sovereignty, or promises of abolition that would have torn the new nation apart. The cosmic story could be a cover for very human secrets, but what if even a fraction of this is true? What if your freedom, your very ability to question, to choose, to think independently, was activated by a document designed to unlock something dormant in human consciousness? Look at your own life. Have you ever felt like you were meant for something more? Like the reality you see isn't the complete picture? That feeling might not be imagination. It might be your genetic memory, awakened by the same frequencies the founders embedded in American consciousness. What if your DNA carries traces of this ancient hybridization? What if the rights you take for granted aren't just legal concepts, but biological imperatives coded into your very being? What if every American, every human who embraces the principles of liberty, is part of an experiment in consciousness that began long before 1776? The Declaration of Independence sits behind bulletproof glass in the National Archives, fading a little more each year despite preservation efforts. But maybe that's intentional. Maybe it's meant to fade, because its real message was never in the ink. It was in the frequency it created, the idea it planted, the activation it triggered. So I ask you, what do you believe? Are we alone in the universe, declaring independence from a human king? Or did America's founders know something about humanity's true origins? Something so powerful, so dangerous, that it had to be hidden in plain sight? Look up at the stars tonight. Look for Sirius, the star of independence, and ask yourself, what were we really declaring independence from? And more importantly, are we truly free yet? The answer might be encoded in your own DNA, waiting for you to declare your own independence from everything you've been told to believe. What will you choose to see?